Hi guys, welcome back to the Drive Life channel. In today's video we're going to be discussing how you can improve your MPG in your Volvo or any car you drive by just changing a few things in your driving habits. Now I've managed to achieve 45 plus MPG in my S80 D5, which is above what the manufacturer says it's going to be for sort of urban and A-road driving. So here's a few things that I've done to help it, and I've sort of done a lot of research into this. Fuel prices have gone up a lot. I think 180 a litre of diesel now, so suddenly your £90 fill up in one of these cars is now 120 or something silly. So that's what this video is aimed at, is how we can perhaps use a little less fuel in the times where fuel prices have got a little out of hand, should we say. So let's get straight into it. So the first one that I sort of have decided to use is just driving very smoothly. You'll notice there we didn't quite come to a full stop, and what that enables the car to do is just keep rolling really, because the greatest use of power or fuel is to break that inertia from 0 miles an hour to 1 miles an hour. After that it sort of gathers momentum. The next thing is not accelerate too quickly. So we're at 45 miles an hour now. I'm just using the throttle as little as I can. I have the instantaneous MPG in front of me. Essentially the accelerator pedal is essentially a MPG pedal, I like to think of it as. The fact that the more you push it, the lower your MPG goes. So the higher up that throttle pedal is, the higher your MPG is going to be. So right now we're cruising 50 and doing 50 to the gallon. And just modulating that throttle, because what you can find is you'll lean into the throttle a little bit more without realising. If you keep an eye on that instantaneous MPG, you can really get some nice numbers. So at the moment the car's cold, and you always need to pay attention to these little tricks even more, because the car is at its least efficient when the car's cold. So probably for the next 15-20 minutes this car is not going to be as efficient as it can be. However, usually when I get to work, I'm seeing 70 MPG coming up on the dashboard on a flat road. So it's entirely dependent on the temperature of the engine. Once the engine's up to temperature, it's much easier to get better MPG. So for those of you that do small journeys, consider this, because your car's never really going to be as efficient as it can be. Try and sort of perhaps put a few journeys together into one long journey, and it'll be far more efficient. The next one's pretty obvious, and that's tyre pressures. So for those of you that don't check your tyre pressures very often, these Volvos don't have tyre pressure monitoring system. At least this sort of era car doesn't. The newer ones do, but what that means is that the tyres can creep a little lower than you'd like them to, without you really knowing. And an example of this is when we went on our trip to Sweden. I went up to sort of the max pressure, or the max recommended pressure for the amount of load that we had in the car, etc. 39 psi, and by the time we got to Sweden, it decreased massively, the tyre pressures, and that was because there was a massive drop in temperature. So tyre pressures drop when the weather gets colder, because the molecules inside don't have as much energy, hence the pressure drops, depending on the temperature. So that's a big thing. And also, tyres do leak air every now and then. Every time you hit a pothole, a bit of air will squeeze out or something. It just happens over time. So make sure you're checking your tyre pressures, because it really can again make a huge difference to your fuel economy. Essentially what you're doing is you're putting brakes on if you've got flat tyres. There's massive amounts of rolling resistance that just make your car have to work a lot harder than it would otherwise have to. And you basically just, for the sake of checking your tyres and pumping them up, you're losing money. Or you'll save a lot of money if you do that. So bear that in mind as well. Go out and check your tyres every sort of week or so, That's what I like to do, just to make sure they're completely up. And you also save money on tyre wear as well, because as tyres deflate, they wear quicker because there's a lot more sort of energy going through the tyre. It's got less surface area. So yeah, it just ruins the tyres basically. So as we're coming out of that 40 now, we're just slowly applying the throttle. We don't need to be going at the speed limit. There's no one behind us, there's no one in front of us, nowhere to be. So just take it nice and easy. Once we're up to our speed, there's a nice bit of flat road. We're just going to put the cruise control and take our foot off the accelerator altogether, because this cruise control on a flat road is optimised to use the least amount of throttle possible, and then obviously mean that you get the most MPG possible. And that's why on motorways etc. I like to use it. So as we sort of wind through these bends, it's just about keeping the car nice and smooth. Now when you come up to sharper bends or junctions where you need to perhaps brake usually, ease off the throttle beforehand and let the car roll up, because essentially if you're having to use the brakes, you've wasted fuel getting to that speed, if that makes sense. Whereas if you ease off, say if I wanted to turn left at the turn now, if I let off now and rolled up the junction rather than driving and now braked, there's a distance there where I haven't used any fuel if I just roll up the spin. And it is perhaps a little slower, but realistically if you leave 5 minutes earlier for your journey, you don't need to worry about it. These cars do love being treated nice and gently. It's just, well, it's better for the car and it's better for your fuel economy, it's better for your wallet. So yeah, that's another few points. The next one is planning your journey. Perhaps there's actually routes that are better. Rather than having to drive up a massive hill, it might actually be better on your fuel economy to go round the hill, depending on how much further it is, etc. So bear that in mind, because hills kill MPG, and especially if you use cruise control on them, they really do kill MPG. It's all that resistance of trying to get 2 tons of Swedish metal up that hill. Obviously uses more fuel. But the good thing about hills, there's also downhill, and you can do a lot of coasting there. These cars, I've noticed, when you ease off the throttle completely, you'll see that the revs drop right down, and that is essentially not quite neutral, but it's designed basically to disengage the gearbox from the engine, so you can get the maximum amount of distance on the coast and save the most amount of fuel. Because what otherwise happens is the engine slows down the car as you're going down the hill, and it just doesn't. You lose your momentum and damages your fuel economy again. So yeah, what else is there? Maintenance, that's a massive one. If you're using old rubbish oil that causes massive means that there's more friction in the engine than there needs to be, then that's going to use more fuel. If the engine's having a harder time moving around itself, or pushing the pistons up and down and turning the cranks, etc., then it's going to use more fuel. If you have your engine change, your oil changed more regularly than the manufacturer suggests, you're going to get better MPG, in my opinion. And I have seen that when you change oils, etc., you do get better MPG. And as that oil starts to fade, you'll notice your MPG starts to tail as well, which is a big indicator that it needs to be changed soon. Same with coolant, same with all the other fluids basically, apart from brake fluids, which isn't going to really affect your MPG, but all the other maintenance items, belts as well. If belts are wearing, there's stretch in them, then that's going to use more fuel. Anything like that, as long as you're keeping your car completely up to spec on maintenance, etc., then you'll be fine. It's just a case of keeping on top of things. Wheel bearings, if you've got wheel bearings that are making a bit of a noise, that's using more fuel. Any sort of noise or extra heat that the car shouldn't be producing is energy that you're losing when you could be going forwards. So yeah, fuel economy as a whole has so many different variables, but I like to think if you can control at least a few of them, you can improve it. For example, here you've got a hill, ease off the cruise control and just have my foot on the accelerator. It doesn't matter if you lose a little bit of speed, as long as you're keeping up with traffic, like this car in front I've caught up with here. doing 45 miles an hour, and they're not even pulling away yet, which means that we can save a little bit of fuel just by easing off. And that's the biggest thing, is speed. I did a week of driving at the speed limit, and I did a week of driving sort of 50 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour under the speed limit, and you really did save fuel. The MPG went from around sort of 40 to 45, 46 plus, which was excellent. And if you think you're doing that per gallon, as 15 gallon tank, an extra 6 MPG, what's that times how many gallons? Sorry, yeah, 15 gallons. You're looking at an extra 90 miles, which could be an extra trip to work. I just think how much, if you fill up 10 times, it's 900 miles worth of tank. It's a whole tank of diesel, £100 plus, just by driving a little bit slower, which is amazing, really. Yeah, another one, obviously everybody knows this one, is your air conditioning. That's a belt that drives off the engine, more resistance in the engine, more fuel usage. Same with all the electricals, the heated seat on, radio. I mean, there comes a point where you've got to value your own comfort as well. You don't buy a nice Volvo with all the kit on not to use it. So I think you've got to balance that on what you prioritise there, because if you have it all on, then it is going to use more fuel, because there's a resistance that goes through the alternator, which goes through the belt into the engine. It's fairly simple, but yeah, so just weigh that up, really. If it's not cold, or if it's not too hot, there's no point having the AC on. If it's nice and cool outside, then save yourself a few quid and turn the AC off. It also saves your air conditioning gas, wear on the air conditioner as well, so that lasts longer. But yeah, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. It's a bit of a rambly video, but just thought I'd get it out for you guys, because quite a few of you are saying you're struggling to afford diesel, etc. So yeah, let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you next video. Cheers.